eBay sellers, you have landed on episode number 101 of eBay the Right Way. Today's date is February 22nd, 2023, and I'm your hostess, Suzanne A. Wells. One quick announcement, in case you missed it on my YouTube channel last week, since we are now 2 years in, the 2021 BOLO book has been reduced to half price. Not because the information is outdated, but I still have a few left. So my loss is your gain. This is a great opportunity to grab this book if you have never seen any of my educational materials. And yes, these items are still BOLOs because I focus on evergreen content that is not hype or fads. Many of the items are mentioned in the Money Making Mondays threads every week on this podcast and in my YouTube videos. So people are still finding and profiting on these items. If you go to the listing in my store, you can click on the text that says See Feedback to read all the feedback left by other sellers who purchased the book. I'm very proud to say there are no neutrals or negatives, all positive comments. And thank you very much to everyone who already purchased the book and left me feedback. I appreciate you, and I'm always thrilled to see that the information is helping other sellers. You can read more about the BOLO book by going to the listing. The link is below. I just wanted to let you know about this special in case you have been on the fence about buying the book, and to give my audience a great deal on information that helps you make more money. The 2021 books will not be reprinted, so when they're gone, they are gone. Okay, now into the chat with Lisa.
Hello, listeners. Today we have Lisa with us. And Lisa, where are you located?
I am located in Grand Junction, Colorado.
Okay. And what is that near?
We are halfway between Denver and Salt Lake City.
Okay.
So I am about 26 miles east of the Utah border in what's called the high desert.
Okay, beautiful.
Yes, we have a lot of red rocks and beautiful canyons around here. So we're very blessed.
Okay, so it's a very outdoorsy kind of area.
Yes, we have everything from snow skiing to river rafting, rock climbing to hiking and biking, and wonderful public lands where I can take my dogs out and they don't have to be on a leash and they can just have a great time.
So are you near any of the, I guess, tourist attractions that people come out there to see and do?
Yes, we are about an hour and a half from Moab, Utah, which is the big jeeping and rock climbing kind of area. And then we're 2 hours away from Vail and about 2.5 hours, and then 2 hours away from Aspen. So yes, we are right in the mecca of being able to access those places in a lot less congestion than out of Denver on the eastern slope. So yeah, no, here we have like the monument, which is just spectacular. And the hiking and stuff here is like in the Book Cliffs, north of here. And then if you go west into Utah, then you're hitting the desert and all those other warmer climates. So we're kind of in between the really cold stuff in the mountains and the really hot stuff in the desert. So our climate here is a little more mild, and it's a great retirement area. We have a lot of retirees here.
Okay, well, it sounds like you have access to anything you want during any season.
Pretty much, yes.
That's great. Good for
Yes.
you. And I'll ask you later, but that might filter down to what's in your thrift stores.
It does. Yes, it does.
Kind of like KC out in Park City that finds
Yes.
all this active clothing and what's the word I'm looking for?
Is sporting gear.
Yes, sports gear.
Yes.
Gear.
Sporting gear.
Word.
Yeah. Because I see a lot of his stuff on the Money Making Mondays and the BOLOs. He gets some really nice stuff.
Yes, we all aspire to be him.
Yes.
And have access to all those things. But hey, you bloom where you're planted. So we'll talk
Right.
about some things that you've sold. Okay, so now we know where you are, and we're all jealous of that. What brought you to eBay? When did you start and why?
We had always had an eBay account since about 1999 and sold things, random things off and on
Mhm.
eBay. But when about 5 years ago, my husband and I had been living in Texas. He worked for Lockheed Martin
Oh,
and he retired early from there. My parents were needing some extra help in order to stay in their home. So it was after family meetings, we decided that it was best that my husband and I could downsize. He could retire early and we would move up here. And my parents have they have the main house and then they have a granny cottage in the back.
mhm.
And my grandmother used to live in the cottage until she passed away. So basically, we downsized from about 2,500 square feet into 1,000 square feet.
Mhm.
And that's where we moved into. And then my father declined, and he passed away about just over a year ago.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And thank you. So since then, it's just been my mom and my husband and I, but we have separate living spaces,
Mhm.
which saves on your sanity.
Yes.
So yeah, we say my mom lives in the big house, and we live in the little house in the back.
Well, yeah, you need that. My mom came to live with me right after I got divorced, and she had hip surgery, and I was 36. So yeah, 20 years ago. And that only lasted a year and a half. We knew it was temporary, but you just can't have two women in the same kitchen and other parts of the house. So
Yes.
I think that preserves relationships when you have that space, because it's not easy bringing somebody into your home, even if you
No.
love them and you're close. It's just you've been out there on your own forever. That's a hard transition.
And it's all about being flexible and understanding where they're coming from,
Mhm.
because as you age, you lose more and more autonomy, and your world shrinks,
Mhm.
and you're not driving anymore. There's a lot of things that happen, and being respectful of that
Mhm.
is really important.
Right.
It's not been easy, but I'm really glad that we've done it.
Good for
So,
you. And
yeah.
that's one of my biggest concerns about aging is not being able to drive.
Yeah.
But you know what I see more and more of around both Greenville and Atlanta are these senior citizen shuttles, come to your neighborhood, pick you up, take you to the grocery store, whatever.
Yeah.
It's like a bus schedule. You have to figure that out. But I just always want to be independent. I don't want to rely on people to have to drive me around. Maybe when we get there, it'll be like, senior Uber.
I think so.
Be like, 4 people at a time and give you a discounted rate or something I think something will evolve for, you look like a Gen Xer. Are you?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Something is going to evolve so that we don't have to depend on anybody for transportation, because
Right.
that's a big concern.
Well, I talked to my daughter about it because she's really been involved with this journey here. And she talks about when you get older, you want a cocoon. You want a place where you feel safe, where you can still pursue your interests.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of like cocooning as your world becomes smaller, so that you feel safe. And
Yes.
that's really what we wanted to provide for my parents. And she promises me, so I'm going to hold her to that.
Okay. Well, we'll check in on you in a few years
Okay.
and see where you are. Okay. So that's how you came to eBay.
Yes.
Now, you consider yourself part-time?
I started part-time because my dad needed a lot of care. But in the last year and a half, I've really become more full-time. What happened is just kind of like with your mother, that there's this built-in inventory of things that your parents have, that there's duplicates of because you're merging two households. And it's like this built-in inventory already there. So that's how we really started selling heavily, was just getting rid of that sports equipment, that all that kind of stuff that they were never going to use again, things that weren't sentimental that we could just pass along to somebody else.
And that there's a demand for.
Yes.
You look at all that stuff and you're like, oh, somebody could be using this. That's what gets me, is even my own personal things. Like if I haven't used something in 6 months to a year, it's like, I'm not going to use it.
Yes, we have a rule. It's like 1 year, $100. So if you haven't used it in a year and you could replace it for $100, we're like, okay, why are we storing these snowshoes? Why are we storing these snow skis? All these different things like that. So that's kind of where my husband and I have developed this theory. It's called the fluidity of stuff. So stuff comes in and we get it prepared and ready to go on to its next phase.
Right.
And we don't want that fluidity to stop, because my mother is quite a sorceress. We call her a sorceress.
Oh, that's funny.
She loves to go to estate sales and auctions, and she's going to be 81 in March. And so that's her thing. That's what she loves to do. That's what gets her up in the morning and gets her motivated to go for the day, is what treasures is she going to find? And she goes out. I mean, she has more stamina than I do as far as going to all these sales and doing the research on them, looking at the photos online ahead of time, deciding what she wants to go after. And all the things that she doesn't keep flow over to me. So I will get boxes set by the back door of her house of things that she's done with. She's not going to put them in her antique booth. She's not going to do anything with them. So that's what goes in the store, is the majority of that.
But you bought a BOLO book for your mom for Christmas, right?
Yes, I bought one last year and then I bought one this past Christmas. So we have two now.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yes. And she has one of those walkers that has a seat in it that you can sit in. And she keeps those books in that little seat in her walker. So she always has them if she needs them. And she can refer back to them when she's out doing things, because she doesn't really look things up on the phone. She just, if she sees something and it says, oh, this is made in England, okay, and she'll buy it.
Right. Now, does she actually sell, or she's just your treasure hunter?
She actually has a booth. She's had that booth 15, 20 years, and it is packed. She has floor to ceiling cases full of jewelry, purses, and collectibles, all kinds of things like that. And she
Okay.
does a pretty good business. It's on Main Street in downtown Grand Junction. During the summer, we have a lot of tourists come through.
Mm-hmm.
She does a good bit out of that booth there.
Okay. So has she ever sold on eBay?
No,
Okay.
it's not her. Technology is very frustrating for her.
Mm-hmm.
And that way she gives it to me so she doesn't have to be fighting the technology.
Right.
She wants to put a price on it and put it in the booth. And if it sells, great. If it doesn't, when they switch over inventory, she has a caregiver that helps her
Mm-hmm.
go into her booth and turn over her inventory. And then she'll send it out to me.
Well, I think that's great that for the older, I guess, senior citizens, they have all this knowledge of
Mhm.
what is valuable. They've lived through so many decades. They know, oh, back in the 50s, this was a thing. And, oh, I haven't seen one of these in 30 years. They have all that knowledge. So that is definitely working in your favor.
Yes, I have learned so much about glass, different kinds of depression glass, the Fenton glass, all those different things that she's collected over the years,
Mm-hmm.
jewel tea, autumn leaf, just all these different types of china and dishware and glasses, knick-knacky things that she really has an extensive knowledge. I, on the other hand, like to go out into the desert and look for trash.
Okay, well, that's a perfect segue into what have you found doing that?
Yes, that has been so much fun for me is I take the dogs out on the BLM land, Bureau of Land Management,
Okay.
land. Out there, people will dump stuff. It's illegal dumping, but they just dump stuff.
Yeah, they just do it anyway. Yep.
Yeah, in the ravines and things like that. So when I'm out walking, I'll come across a random refrigerator
Mm-hmm.
and where somebody's just dumped a refrigerator. And if the doors are usually open, it's kind of scattered because after they've dropped it out of the truck. Well, in that refrigerator, there's loads of shelves that go into the side of the refrigerator. There's the glass shelves themselves. So I just basically harvest all of the parts that I can off of that refrigerator. I take a picture of the model, the make and the model of it,
Right.
in the doorway, and just lug all that stuff home.
Mm-hmm.
I've done it with dishwashers. I've done it with vacuum cleaners where somebody has just like dumped a vacuum out there by the side of the road.
Mm-hmm.
And I pick those up and bring them home and take them apart and run them through the dishwasher to
Mm-hmm.
clean them out really well, all the parts that I'm going to sell, and sell that. The biggest thing I've ever done was a Volkswagen Eurovan third row seat.
Okay.
And I was out with my father and it was sitting by the side of the road. And we have a lot of, say they're like squatters, but they're people who come in and they decide they're going to turn their van into a camper.
So this is called van life.
Right.
They're doing it on purpose, and there's all these YouTube videos about that. And I think some of them are fake. They're just pretending, but some people are really doing that.
Right. Well, someone had dumped this third row seat of this Volkswagen Eurovan, and it was clean. It was just sitting there like a couch, or some kind of piece of furniture. So I picked it up and I slid that thing in the back of our van. We have a Honda van, Odyssey.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was able to stick that in the back of that van, and I brought it home and I parted that thing out. I made over $200 on that seat because I sold the seat belts, I sold the latches, I sold the rollers underneath. I even took off the covers from the bottom bench seat and the top, washed them, and sold those to a couple in Canada. The headrest sold first on the back there. And yeah, I made over $200 on that piece of desert trash.
That is genius. Good for you.
Yeah, and it's fun because I feel like I'm helping in a small way to clean up.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have the ability to take like the whole appliance, but at least part of it's getting recycled and back into the usable stream and not just out there.
Well, and if it's an older model of anything, those parts may not be made anymore, and somebody's just waiting. I've got my Kia 2008 extra headrests for sale.
Yes.
I took them off when I was moving to lay the seat flat, make it a cargo area. And I was like, when I was done, I put the seat back up and I was like, I can see so much better without those dumb headrests. And nobody sits back there anyway. So I was like, oh, I wonder how much these are worth. So
they are worth some good money.
I mean, and as time goes by, 2008 gets older and older. So somebody's going to want them at some point.
Yes,
yeah.
And I thought, especially, I was kind of worried about doing the seat covers because I didn't know exactly how they were put on, but it was just a string. And that was really interesting, that how easy it came off and how nicely it washed up. And it was able to be reused. Kids spill stuff all the time. People are always looking for those kind of seat covers and things like that.
Well, that's just really smart because I have seen people selling dishwasher parts, the microwave turntable things, especially if they're glass, those break. Even
the little rings underneath that have the wheels on it, those break very easily. If you see something alongside the road, like a dishwasher or a refrigerator or something like that, that's going out on like spring cleanup or whenever people put out large things, or just along the highways and things, in rural areas, you'll see things. You can get $100, $50 is just sitting on the side of the road. It's looking at it in a different perspective.
Right. And I think no matter where you live, there's little unofficial, maybe secret dumping areas.
Yes.
Even though there's big signs, no dumping, all of that, but it still happens. So if you can find those and just revisit them, you can come up with all kinds of treasures.
Right. Free is great.
Yeah, free is great. Well, what other kinds of things do you sell?
I do a lot of jewelry because that's what my sorceress brings me. And I do a lot of glassware, dishes, Waterford crystal, things like that. So I do ship a lot of breakables. And I have gotten really good at double boxing and making sure that things don't break. And I do occasionally have a breakage. That's just what happens in the process sometimes. Things break. Yeah.
It's occupational hazard.
No matter what.
It happens sometimes, despite your best efforts. Sometimes, yeah.
I encourage people to still try shipping. If that's where your bloom where you're planted, and that's what you're getting is a lot of glassware and dishes.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of great YouTube channels out there that are doing shipping, just shipping videos on how to wrap the stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody does it a little bit differently, depending on what packing supplies you have. I like to try and source my stuff in the dumpster.
Mm-hmm.
Again, we have a store down on Main Street that they keep all their boxes for us and
Oh,
a lot of
nice.
packing material.
Okay.
So we've made friends and relationships with stores, small businesses, to be able to recycle that material. I know a lot of it goes to the cardboard recycling, but a lot of the plastic just ends up in the landfill.
Mm-hmm.
So we try and capture as much of that as we can, and it saves us money and it saves it from going into the trash.
Yeah. And I think if you're intentional and you think about it, you can get all your shipping supplies for free. I've got some neighbors that save things for me. And when I asked them, I said, anything that comes in an Amazon box, including the box, or the Amazon padded mailers, that brown craft paper, and air pillows, just all that stuff. And just, put it by my door. And I've got a big stockpile. And even when I go to the grocery store, I use my own, fabric reusable bags, but I usually pick up 2 or 3 paper grocery bags. And those make great filler. You can cut them smaller and it's free and it works and it's paper. So it's biodegradable. So even if it only just gets one use, it's not plastic.
Right. And I've moved away. I pay a little bit more and I get the cornstarch peanuts.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're not the other styrofoam peanuts that stay around forever. And you just have to make sure you keep them away from your dogs because they're going to want to eat them because they're made of corn.
Oh, okay. So they'll break down.
Yeah, the dogs think that's a treat. Yum, let's eat some peanuts.
Oh my gosh, I never would have thought of that.
Yes.
They're called cornstarch packing peanuts.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So if they get wet, they shrivel up and they just disintegrate.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what I use, just so that I'm not using so much styrofoam.
Right. Yeah. Well, and also the cardboard egg cartons. Obviously, you don't put your eggshells back in there. They're clean.
Right.
I've had people say, but they're contaminated. I'm like, no, don't put the shells in there. Do something different with the shells. But those are great because they're cardboard and you can cut them up, and I like to make a little perimeter of those and then put the breakable thing in the middle. So it's kind of like an alternative to double boxing. You're just making a nest for your item in the middle.
Right.
So yeah. And you can also sell egg cartons. I don't know about right now because a lot of people aren't buying eggs because they're so expensive. But yeah, the price will go back down. It is sad when bacon is cheaper than eggs.
That is amazing, isn't it?
So that industry will settle out and regulate again. But just for the listeners, you can sell both, any kind of egg carton. It just has to be clean. And I used to do that, and I would figure out like how many fit into one of those, is it 12 by 8 priority boxes, the bigger one, like how many will fit in there. And then you can just save that many and then do a listing and just, keep doing, sell similar, whatever, because you've already done the listing. But yeah, people with backyard chickens, they need those. And a lot of times they're cheaper to buy them on eBay than go to the manufacturer.
Yes, that's true.
So I don't know how we got on that topic.
I was going to tell you something interesting back to the desert trash.
Okay.
And shipping. The largest thing I've ever shipped that I found on the desert as trash was a truck grill. It was a basically like a high performance plastic,
Mm-hmm.
kind of the front grill of a truck. And it
Okay.
was a honeycomb style. And it was an American made car, but I can't remember specifically which one it was. This was several years ago. A guy bought it in Ireland. So I shipped that big front truck grill in 2 TV boxes. I
Oh, smart.
Frankenboxed it together. I made a cage of pool noodles around it
Uh-huh.
to support it all. And that thing went all the way to Ireland and it made it. And there was a piece of trash out here. And somebody in Ireland needed it for a car that they had there that they couldn't get American parts over there. So
don't you love that when you
yes.
find this discarded item that obviously nobody wants? And like for me, it's something on the floor at the thrift store, like it fell off the rack or somebody threw it on the floor. And I mean, I'm looking everywhere, but it's like, it always amazes me. I found this thing that nobody wanted, and here's somebody on the other side of the world that needs it and paid me for it.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody ends up happy.
Right. I sold it for over $100, and then he paid $200 in shipping to get it there.
Oh my.
However, if you look at how much it probably would have cost him to order it from the manufacturer, it would have been much more expensive to ship that. It probably would have been $1,000 versus
if
$300.
they even had it.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, that's the thing, is a lot of these parts aren't even available. And that whole problem is compounded after COVID with supply chain issues and manufacturing issues and, you know, materials issues, all of that. You just don't know what the next thing is that is going to be hard to find.
Right. Who thought eggs would go all wonky?
Did you
never know.
see that news report about people renting their backyard chickens?
No.
People that have the backyard chickens are renting them out. Like you go get it in a cage or whatever and bring it back to your house, and the chickens lay eggs, and then when you're done, you give the chickens back. That is an opportunity. That is an entrepreneurial idea. Like a
wow,
that
like, is.
I have something that people need. How can I monetize that?
Yes, that's so clever. Really, I never would have thought of that.
So all you people listening that have backyard chickens, that could be a business idea for you. Google that, renting backyard chickens, because people that have them, and I lived on a farm and we had chickens. It's sometimes it's feast or famine. Like one day you might have 30 eggs, and like, what are you going to do with that? You can only eat so many. You can only make so many pound cakes. I think you can freeze eggs like in an ice cube tray, and then reconstitute them later. But it's not like vegetables that freeze easily. So, if you've got extras, and here we're having a shortage, other than just selling them, you could actually rent the chickens out.
Okay, yeah, because the other person would have to pay the feed. And
right. Yeah, and take care of them and stuff. So I don't know how that works. I just saw that on the news and I was like, that's pretty genius.
Yes.
Okay. Well, let's talk about some of your other sales, maybe high dollar sales or just things that surprised you.
The most expensive thing I've ever sold was jewelry, of course. Jewelry always seems to go very high. I had a gold bracelet that was about an inch wide. It was a charm bracelet. Mm-hmm. So it came with a bunch of gold charms on it, which I took off and sold individually. And then the bracelet I sold by itself, and that sold for over $12,000.
On eBay?
Yes.
Oh, did that make you nervous?
It did, yes.
When was this?
It's been several years ago. It's been a long
Okay.
time ago.
So was managed payments part of this, or was
Yes.
it?
No, it wasn't. It was PayPal.
Okay.
I remember it was PayPal.
Oh my.
But
So,
I used to work in the jewelry industry back in the late 80s, early 90s, and we would mail stuff all the time. We just made sure it was insured.
right.
So
Right.
we always insured adult signature, all of these kind of safeguards that you put in when you're
Mhm.
mailing jewelry.
Mhm.
I still do just a little bit of insurance, even if it's an inexpensive pair of earrings,
Mhm.
because jewelry seems to get lost in the mail no matter what.
Yeah,
Doesn't
you gotta
matter if
wonder, is it post office sticky fingers or?
yes, it's so easy for it to go missing. I've had
Even if
issues with,
you put it in a bigger package,
you
like it's
can put it in a bigger
earrings,
package.
but you put it in a bigger box, so it
Yes, you
doesn't look
can.
like jewelry.
You
Yeah.
can do that. Anyway, everything worked out fine. And it was one of those moments where I'm like, I should do this more.
Mm-hmm.
I should do this more because this is paying for my insurance,
Mm-hmm.
my health insurance, which has been the biggest thing since we retired early
Mm-hmm.
is insurance, health insurance costs.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big whammy every year.
Mm-hmm.
And so it used to cost my husband and I that much per year for
Mm-hmm.
our insurance until he was able to go on Medicare.
Okay.
So that's one of the things to watch out when you're going to do this full time is watch out for those residual costs that, wow, it's like a house payment every month.
Well, and I remember when the insurance industry shifted,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of entrepreneurs are just coming up with more creative ways to do it. And also at the time, like it was Obamacare, and it backfired on small business owners because
Yes.
my monthly insurance, my health insurance was $100 a month with a $2,500 deductible. And then after Obamacare, my same exact policy went up to $400 a month with a $12,000 deductible.
Yes.
It's like you're never going to reach your deductible.
No.
So in response to that, the world adapted, and we have all these urgent care places where you just walk in and pay when you need to.
Right.
There's a lot of people that don't have insurance, health insurance, and it's really not by choice. It's financial.
It is.
Like, do I want to eat and pay my utilities, or do I want insurance that doesn't pay for anything? It's very frustrating. But
Yes.
I do see the world is adapting to that. And but you're right, when you leave that full-time job with benefits, that's definitely a consideration because when it's just you as an entrepreneur, you have to factor all those things in.
Yes, because before this, we had really nice Lockheed Martin insurance,
Oh,
and it was like a sweet Cadillac policy. And then to come off that into, the marketplace, it was wow. It was wow, like a house.
yeah.
payment.
And the hardest part is that even if you're paying this insurance, this very expensive insurance policy doesn't cover anything.
You have to meet your deductibles, and you have to meet your out-of-pocket costs on top of what you're already paying in insurance. So that's just a beware.
Mm-hmm. And it's also an incentive to be healthy. Like, okay, I'm going to change my life, which I did in 2018 when I cured my type 2 diabetes with lifestyle changes. I have a whole video about that if listeners want to go look at that on YouTube. But that was an incentive to be healthy and not be on all these medications, and because insurance wasn't covering it. So if you really pay attention to your health and be proactive, I know there's all kinds of things we can't control. I'm not talking about, terminal illnesses and all those horrible things. But, do as much as you can to live a healthy lifestyle. And then you don't need to go to the doctor.
Right.
So anyway, we have gotten off the topic of eBay, but I think entrepreneurs and eBay sellers, we're kind of in this group together where we do share some of these similar struggles.
Yes, we do. Yes.
Okay, back to the $12,000 piece of jewelry. I'm wondering, you shipped it, and did you just leave that money in your PayPal account just in case something happened?
I moved it. I moved it.
That's a lot of money to sit in PayPal, $12,000.
I moved it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it ended up buying a car. So.
Oh, that is wonderful.
Right, so.
I love that story. And it was earrings?
No, it was a bracelet.
Bracelet. Okay.
Yeah, but it was very heavy gold. And it was from the 1960s. And I'm trying to remember who the designer was of it. But I don't remember. It's been 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm. But
that's where that went.
And again, where did you find it?
It was at an estate sale.
And they didn't pick up on it. Do you know what you paid for it?
But it was about $400.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't that I got it for 25 cents.
Right,
I did pay a good amount of money for it.
And how long did that take to sell? Do you remember?
It was a while. It took maybe 6 months, I think.
Okay.
We had to sit there for a while and find the right buyer. But she loved it. She loved it. So it was great.
I mean, other than Vegas and getting lucky, where else can you invest $400 and walk away with $12,000?
Yeah. Well, it wasn't quite that much because they took out all the fees.
Right. Well, okay.
Everybody got a nice.
Let's say 11,000.
Yeah, a nice little bit of that.
But still, to have that kind of return on something in only 6 months is pretty amazing.
It's lucky. It's just luck.
No, I don't think so.
Everybody can win. Everybody can win the eBay lottery. Everybody.
I don't think it was luck because you do have to know the business. You had to take a risk and plunk down $400, which a lot of people wouldn't do. Either have it or that's just too risky. But always in the back of my mind, when something's a little expensive, I'm like, well, can I at least sell it for what I paid for it? And if the answer is yes, then it's worth doing.
That was my thought too, because I was really nervous about it. And I had also bought an Italian Micro Mosaic. I know a lot of people call the Micro Mosaics in pins. They're made in Italy. And they have like a bigger chunk of stone, and then it creates a pattern, like a floral or some kind of a scene. And back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, a lot of people who would travel to Italy would get souvenirs. And these were micro mosaics, where they were little bitty, teeny tiny pieces of stone like lapis or malachite. And it was in an onyx frame. And it was probably, I'd say, about a good 4 inches in diameter. And it was a scene of a goat herder and a maiden.
Okay.
So the goat herder was kind of, hey to the maiden.
Okay.
Check out this scene. It was kind of like one of those romantic scenes.
Okay. And I just looked this up on Google so I could understand what you're talking about. Some of these pieces almost look like cloisonne.
They do. They're almost
the materials mixing together in a pattern.
Right. But the micro mosaics are really teeny tiny ones.
Yes.
Pieces.
I'm seeing pendants and rings.
Yes. And brooches. This was a brooch. Yes.
Okay.
And it was a very large one. And it had a crack in it. So I thought, I don't know with the crack if it's okay or not. I
Mhm.
still paid like $125 for it because I knew the frame was gold
Mhm.
around it and it was extra large. And the scene was not it was a figural scene. It wasn't a flower or botanicals or anything like that. It was special because it was a scene.
Mhm.
And they were made at the turn of the century as souvenir pieces. Well, turns out that the women's estate sale that we went to was the daughter of the gentleman who invented the Otis, the escalator. I think it
Elevator, Otis
was, anyway,
elevator.
yes, it was in that. And she was in, anyway, it was related to elevators and escalators. She was in that family. And when she had traveled at that time, she had picked up this brooch.
Okay.
And I held on to that brooch for several years. And then I finally decided, I'm never going to do anything with this. I need to sell it.
Mhm.
So I sold it and I got over $800 for it.
Oh, nice.
Broken.
Well, it's a collector's item.
Yes.
Doesn't matter. I mean, it's seen some hard times, so it's going to have a crack maybe. As
Yeah.
older things get, the less perfect condition they're in. So collectors know that.
Yes. And another interesting thing I found, I think it was 2 years ago at an estate sale here, was if you're familiar with mourning jewelry, where they put a person's hair in a piece of
Yes.
jewelry kind of thing.
Yes. In fact, Queen Victoria wore a locket with Prince Albert's hair in it for the
Right.
rest of her life as
And
part
it
of
was, yes, it was a very, very popular at the time. A lot of people did that.
Mhm.
I found a shadow box with a wreath inside of it of flowers. And those flowers were all made up of human hair.
Are you kidding?
It was gorgeous. It was beautiful. And there were so many different colors of hair in there. And so I did some research because I thought, oh, this is a mourning kind of a thing. It turns out that it's also was something that they did for like sororities, something to commemorate a special occasion where a group of people would donate locks of hair. They would send it off to these craftspeople who would create these fabulous woven hair pieces of either jewelry or like this was something you would hang on the wall. So it would have possibly hung in like a sorority house where at the time there was not photography that could photograph everybody,
Mhm.
but they still wanted some way to commemorate that they were there. And this was a way that they chose to do it, was with their hair.
Well, and going back, I don't know how many centuries, hair jewelry was a thing. That
Mhm.
was, women would take some of their hair and, I don't know if it's braiding or weaving, but they would make like a necklace or a bracelet for their man who was going off to war. So he would have something of her with him.
Right.
And then they would do it for, deceased people. They would take some of their hair and make something out of it so that the surviving family would have something of them
Right.
to cherish and remember them by. But that was definitely an art, making hair jewelry, like watch fob chains and necklaces and all kinds of stuff.
Bracelet, yeah, earrings, all of that kind of thing to wear. If you see any hair jewelry like that, pick it up because it's worth money.
And it doesn't really look like it's made of hair. It just
No, it doesn't.
like it's made of some kind of silky substance. I don't even know what kind of material.
Almost like a woven fabric.
Yeah.
It's
the
but
weaving
it's
can be
textured.
just so tiny. Like they must have had tools to do this because your fingers are too big to make those tiny little braids or patterns or whatever, the weaving of it. So yeah, that's really interesting.
So that was a fun one. And then the one that I had put on your over 100
$100, right? Mm-hmm.
And it was a little piece of jade in a little, it was set in a 18 karat gold, bright yellow gold dragon that was kind of circling and nesting around this little piece of jade that was bezel set. And it had come off of a stick pin because I could see on the back there was lead solder. And a lot of times they use lead solder because they didn't have the resources to solder with anything at a higher temperature.
Mm-hmm.
So if something came off the back, they would try and reattach it with a piece of lead solder.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where this piece originally came from. It was about the size of a dime, I would say. It had some Asian characters on the back. I couldn't tell if it was Chinese. I assumed it was Chinese because of the way the dragon was.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't sure how to price that. It was in a box of other things that my mother had bought in the whole box. And so I was just rooting around the bottom and I saw this little thing. Turned out that that was a very high quality piece of jade, very collectible by the Asian market. And it sold for about $450, I think, if I remember correctly, for this little dime piece of gold and jade.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a fun one. That surprised me because it went on auction and I thought, I'll put it about $125 and see what happens, not expecting anything. And then at the very end, of course, they always put in their last minute bids and it just went crazy. And it went to Asia. It went to China.
I love those kind of sales where you're just not sure and I'm just gonna put it out there and see what happens.
Yeah, that's the thing is don't be afraid to just try it. If it doesn't sell at $125, you can always just list it on a buy it now or try another auction in a month or so, because maybe then the buyer will be there.
Right.
And it'll go. If you know it's worth something, you got to put it out there or you're never going to get any fish to come.
That's right. That's what I look at it as, fishing. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Fishing for buyers.
That's right. That's exactly what we do. We fish for buyers.
Good for you. Well, you have a very interesting business. And would you believe our time is just about over?
Can I tell you about one more really fun thing?
Absolutely.
Tell you
Yes.
one more thing. My father always wanted to build a sailboat and he wanted to sail around the world. He started building a concrete hull sailboat, but he never did finish it. One of the things he bought was this red, it was almost like a wetsuit,
Mm-hmm.
but it had baffling in it. And turned out what it was a yachting suit that was made in the 1970s that you would wear when you were sailing in cold water.
Mm-hmm.
In case you went overboard, you would be insulated for a while that you could survive.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea what that was. I put it on your Facebook group and somebody came back within, I don't know, a day and told me exactly what it was because I had no idea what it was. They told me exactly what it was, who made it, even sent a picture of an ad that they had found for where these suits originally sold. And so I was able to sell that, and that went to Norway.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yes.
You remember how much it sold for?
It was in the $300 range.
Nice.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. And a shout out to all the wonderful members of my Facebook group, even if you're just a lurker, because people pop up when they know something and can help you. And I know a lot of us eBay sellers, we just love the research part. It's just somebody might see that and be like, yeah, what is that? I want to go try to figure that out for her. And, post the answer. Sometimes they just know off the top of their head, but
Yeah.
it's such a diverse group of people all over the world and from all walks of life. And just the power of putting a photo in front of a group of people and then somebody just knows what it is because of their life experience. They're like, oh yeah, I had one of those when I was a kid or whatever. That is invaluable. That is better than a subscription to anything for research, is
Exactly.
just this network of people that,
Yes.
and then the other group is the What Is This group? Are you a member of that?
No.
Okay, well, it's called What Is This? Antique and vintage identification or unusual item identification. Doesn't have to be vintage. There's 200,000 people in that group now.
Wow.
And I go on that group sometimes just to see what people are posting. Like, do I know what it is? Oh yeah, that's a flower frog. Or, oh yeah, that's a hair receiver. Like,
Right.
you can just test your knowledge. It's better than watching Antiques Roadshow or anything, because you're seeing all these objects and photos posted, and you can learn what they are. So if you ever see one, you're going to know.
Right.
But it's all free. These are just people who either worked at estate sales, or they, fourth generation antique business, or a lot of them have a background like that, or they just know stuff.
Right.
So it's kind of like a puzzle or a guessing game of like, what is this? And so for listeners, if you're not in that group, it's called What Is This? Unusual Item Identification on Facebook. And it's just a fun way to learn more stuff. And sometimes something will pop up and you'll know what it is. And it's like, oh yeah, I'm aware. I knew what that was.
That's great. And the other thing that I have found very helpful is your calendar.
Oh, okay.
I bought your calendar. I needed a calendar, and I thought, oh, I'm just going to support your channel, just support you. I'm going to buy
Thank you so much.
calendar. And so I didn't have a lot of expectations about it. And then when I got it, I started looking at it, and there's so much great motivation in the calendar. There's so many great things for inspiration. I have found that I'm looking at it several times a day and really thinking about what the suggestion is of, go to your death pile and list 10 more things, 10 things out of your death pile this week.
Mm-hmm.
And doing that just makes me think, oh yeah, I've got all those clothes I need to list. And those are always the last thing I want to list, but I'll go do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've really, really enjoyed your calendar.
Well, thank you very much. I'm glad I could plant the seed of something to hold people accountable.
Yeah.
Just, you see it that morning and then it kind of nags you all day. Okay, I'll go list 5 things.
Yeah. And I really like the movie suggestions too, to be inspired. I think that helps a lot, because we get into the day to day of listing, and we're all by ourselves, and you put on that movie and you think, I can do anything.
Right. Some of them are so inspirational. I really like the one called Joy, about Joy Mangano, and we know her from that mop, but it was a long journey to get there.
Right.
And I've also started watching the newest season of The Food That Built America on the History Channel. I think it's on Hulu now, but like the other day I watched the one about Dunkin' Donuts and Krispy Kreme. Of course, you want to go get some donuts after that, but just all the things these people went through to be successful. It didn't just happen. They didn't just build a billion-dollar company overnight. There was a lot of ups and downs, and that really speaks to me as an entrepreneur, because you have days where you feel like nothing's happening. Is this going to be over? Is eBay over?
Is it on? Is it on?
Yeah. Sometimes I'll ask my daughter, I'll be like, will you put an offer on something of mine just so I'll know it's working? It's just been, crickets for 3 days, but it's just cycles. It always comes back. But I think historically, watching other successful entrepreneurs, it's never easy. It's never easy for anybody. And one interesting thing is sometimes they are way ahead of the curve. Like, people don't get their idea yet. And it's not that it's a bad idea. It's just they're visionary, like Steve Jobs or somebody like that just knew his products would work and people would love them, but it just took a little while. So anyway, okay, well, this has been such a fun talk. The last question I ask is, what is your favorite part of being a reseller?
I like the research. I like finding out about new things with the hair wreath. I always thought it was just morning jewelry, but it wasn't. Sometimes it was a celebration of a happy occasion, a wedding or sorority sisters or something that I always thought it was a very solemn thing. But no, it can be something that's actually happy. So I enjoy the history, like finding out different things like that.
And I bet you go down all kind of rabbit holes researching jewelry.
I do. Yes, I do.
Because it was made for so many reasons in all parts of the world, so many different styles and makers.
And different cultures used it in different ways. It also depends. I mean, we have a very Western-centered focus that we don't even think about how other cultures would view that particular item. So that's always interesting to find out about how different cultures view the same thing.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, well, it's been so fun talking with you. And what are you going to be up to this afternoon?
This afternoon, I am going to be I have to list more china, which is fine. It's you list it and then you have multiples. So that's fine, but it's not my favorite thing to do. It's just something that I need to get done.
And that can be hard to photograph because the light reflects. So you've got to.
Yeah, we have a really nice photo setup over here. I'm actually in my father's shop, what used to be his woodworking shop. And I kind of took it over, and now this is my eBay-dom.
Yep.
I have my eBay-dom with my sorceress, and I'm very fortunate.
Your sacred place, right?
Yes.
Okay, well, I'll let you go and get busy with that, and we will see you on the Facebook group.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. Bye.
Thank you again, Lisa, and we wish you all the best with your desert scavenging. Today's trivia question, since Lisa lives near the desert, what percentage of the Earth's land surface is made up of deserts? Here are a few seconds to think about it. Okay, seen from space, the majority of the Earth's surface is covered by oceans. That makes up 71% of the surface of the Earth, with the remaining 29% for land. Deserts actually make up 33%, or 1/3 of the land's surface area. You would think that deserts are hot, but there are cold deserts too. In fact, the largest cold desert in the world is the continent of Antarctica. There are barren rock fields in Antarctica that never receive snow, even though they're incredibly cold. The largest hot desert is the Sahara Desert in northern Africa, covering 9 million square kilometers. And speaking of Antarctica, I have a friend who's on a cruise there right now. The cruise was around different ports in South America, and I didn't realize a couple things. Number one, that cruises even went to Antarctica, and number two, how close Antarctica is to South America. It's only 600 miles from the southern tip of South America to the northern tip of Antarctica. So I got off topic there. Sorry about that. Anyway, I've been seeing her photos on Facebook of their travels, and was just amazed that this cruise went to Antarctica. Of course, they didn't get off the ship, but they did cruise around and get to see the beautiful landscapes and icebergs and sunsets and sunrises and all of that kind of stuff. Okay, next week my guest is a repeat offender, Eileen Cole, aka the Book Lady. It has been a year since our last podcast, and her life and business has changed. So we wanted to do an update. She shares some very helpful information about sourcing and selling books. I will admit I am intimidated by the book category because it just seems so very overwhelming to me. And maybe some of you listeners out there feel the same way. So we need somebody to give us a roadmap on what to look for and what to leave behind. So make sure to tune in next week and listen to what Eileen has to say. Okay, that's a wrap for this episode. And as always, thank you so much for tuning in, and make it a great day on eBay. Bye till next week.